The Things We All Carry is a podcast about first responders and their stories surrounding trauma on the job. The intention of this podcast is to raise awareness and share meaningful conversation around a subject often viewed as taboo or simply ignored. Be aware this content may be graphic and it is real. It may not be suitable for children or adults triggered by this subject matter.
Yet again, I sit in front of a microphone with no idea what I'm going to say. And yet again, it's been an adventurous week, I suppose. I've been kind of all over the place with thoughts, and I never know exactly what I'm going to say. And it's kind of always surprises me when the words do come out. Sometimes I feel a lot of pressure to do these, and sometimes it's relaxed and easy. Today's a little bit of pressure because I'm not sure what to say today. I've had a few friends going through some stuff lately, and I'm trying to learn how to help people, like to be there, engage them, let them engage with me, let them express what's going on, but not really have a buy-in, if that makes sense. And it's not that I'm disinterested. I'm very interested and I care a lot. I just can't take it on for myself. And that's something I have to learn. I've had to learn, and I'm still learning to do with the show as well, is to listen to stories, empathize, sympathize in a way, but not take it on. That's tricky. And I've always wondered, I'm not likening myself to a therapist, but I've always wondered how therapists do it, how they sit and they listen to all these stories day in and day out, hours, multiple sessions a day, and they don't take some of that on for themselves. And I think the best ones will tell you, well, they have their therapist, and that therapist has their therapist. And I think that's necessary, because when you do listen to these stories and you experience these stories, it's hard not to take some of it on, especially when you hear these stories and you look at it and you go, oh, there's some of me in every one of these stories. And I'm here to tell you, there's some of me in every one of these stories. It's hard not to have a piece of me in every one of these stories. That's basically what my tagline is. This is universal. These traumas can be very specific and very personal, but the experience itself and what we come away with is very universal. We all have these feelings. We all have these feelings. Whether you experience, it doesn't matter what you experience, because what you experience is what you experience, and how it affects you is how it affects you. But we all have it. Some of this is universal. And that's what I've been trying to say from day one, is I'm trying to get that message out that you are not alone. I am not alone. No one is alone in any of this. Someone has been through what you've been through. Someone has recovered from what you're going through right now. And that's what these stories are for. These stories are to help. These stories are to inform. These stories are to teach. These stories are to learn from. And that's amazing, because I had people stepping up from all over saying, I want to tell a story. And I mean, I have people from 18 years old to 60, 65 years old who have an abundance of time on the job, or have zero time on the job, haven't even started a career yet, and want to talk because they want to talk about how they think they should set themselves up for success. It's amazing. It blows me away every time somebody wants to talk to me. I love it, and I look forward to it, and I'm eager to keep going. However, I need that time, and I need that space to process some of that. Sometimes things feel too personal, and so I take a step back, and it's necessary. But then I realize, nope, it's not my story. I just relate to it in some manner, and I get through it and I process it. Here's an example. This week's guest was a canine handler at one point in his career, and he talks about losing his dog. He talks about having to put her down when that time came. When in the way life treats you, you have multiple things going on at once. And I had multiple things going on at once. I also had friends who were putting down the dog early because of cancer. So I've had these two narratives going on in my life, and I'm thinking about my own dogs. And then I'm thinking about a call that I had when I was on the truck. And I think, oh my God, because that was the one time I got emotional and I actually cried while I was on the job. I was bossing a truck one day and we left the grocery store. We were going down a highway. It's not an interstate, just a highway. And I saw an accident on the other side. And I told my driver, I said, hey, let's pull around. Let's at least block traffic and see what's going on. So I threw lights on. We turn around and mark us on scene of an accident. And I get out to investigate. And I walk up and there's a good distance between the two cars. And I'm curious what's going on. They're all looking at the ground. And I'm like, God, I don't know about this. And sure enough, I get up to the cars and I get up to the gap. And there's a dog laying between the two cars. And this dog has obviously been hit by a car. It's obvious he's in pain. And it's obvious he's going to die. And I don't know why, but that call was the one time I cried on duty. Now, I'll laugh because my crew's going to tell you, no, I know when you cried on duty is when you said goodbye when you retired. Yes, but from a call standpoint, that's the one time I cried. And I couldn't figure it out for the life of me why that call got me. But then it's just, I guess it's a realization that that's an innocent. This dog has no idea. This dog is living in our world and doesn't understand what a car is, doesn't understand what traffic is, doesn't understand any of that. And it was just living its life and it got caught up in our world. And unfortunately, it was killed because of it. And for some reason, seeing that dog on the ground, suffering, and then watching the owner pull up to the scene and realize that's his dog and scoop the dog up, listen to the dog react, and listen to the owner react. I couldn't take it. I cried. And I tried to hide it because that's not what we do, right? I tried to hide it, but it was obvious. And it affected me. It affected me way more than I ever expected it to. And I still can't put my finger on exactly why, but it did. And there are very few things that I like to say there are very few things that affected me in my career as a firefighter. And I can put them into three categories. One, animals. For some reason, animals affect me. Between that accident or the fire where we pulled out 3 dead dogs or the fire we pulled out 1 dead dog, whatever it is, animals affected me. 2, children. Of course, children always affected me. The first time I had a pediatric call stick with me, I didn't understand what was going on. And it took a while to process and figure out why it stuck with me. The third one, and this is just me, and many others have said it, but hangings. I see every hanging I ever ran. I don't think I'll ever get the hangings out of my head. And those are rough. But it's those 3 that get me, those 3 that stick with me quite a bit. So I think where I'm going with this is like I said, I have a piece of me in all of these stories. And I've said it before, I'm a flawed human being. I'm a flawed individual. I'm just trying to learn to be better each day. I've made my share of mistakes. I've hurt my share of people. I've been hurt. I've had mistakes made. But my goal nowadays is to learn from all of it, improve myself so I can be better for other people. And part of that is be a better listener, be a better friend, be a better host of this show, be a better whatever. I'm striving to be better. Welcome to episode 116 of The Things We All Carry. Today I have John Talin. John is out of Massachusetts. He contacted me via Mike Nasti at the Tip of the Spear Leadership Podcast. It was a suggestion, and Mike nailed it. Mike said, "I think this guy will be a good choice as a guest for your show." He said he wasn't really what Mike really puts on his show, but he thought he'd fit on mine, and he nailed it. Mike was right. This guy is perfect for my show. John is 24 years in the fire service. He is currently with Hyannis Fire in Massachusetts. He's a lieutenant and a paramedic up there. He is also a former canine handler for the Massachusetts Task Force, and he talks about his dog. He talks about that relationship and what she meant. But John also decided he wanted to come on the show. He'd done a podcast already, but when he reached out to me, his point was I wasn't completely truthful. I didn't share everything. And I said, okay, well, what is it you want to share? And he covered some of it. And he said, some of it is about a sex addiction. And there are going to be people I know, and I can hear them now, are going to tell me that sex addiction isn't real. But the way it affected John's life, it had to be addressed, and he did. And he wanted to share that with the audience that, hey, this is something that happens. Just because it's taboo doesn't mean we can't talk about it. And listen, it's in my intro. You know, some of these things are taboo and we want to talk about them. So John took a leap and he stepped up and he said, this is my experience. I want to put it out there. I want everyone to hear it and I want people to learn from it. And that takes guts. That's a ballsy move on his part, and I applaud him for it. And I hope that you take this episode and treat it with some of the respect, because it took guts for John to step up and say, I want to talk about everything. So y'all sit back, give it a listen, enjoy, let me know what you think. Reach out to me. Like I've said, I'm available. Reach out to me, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Send me a text if you can. I don't care. Let's talk. Let's see what you think. Let's see where you're at. Let's see where you want to go. And then get out there and do something for yourselves. A quick reminder to please help us build a community which not only recognizes but supports each other through the struggles and recovery. Reach out through Instagram at The Things We All Carry or email mystory@thethingsweallcarry.com to offer support and share your story. Please remember to leave a review on iTunes and give a shout out to any first responder you know, love, or care about. Y'all enjoy the show. All right, well, if you're ready, let's have a conversation and see where we go with this.
Me.
Good morning and welcome back to The Things We All Carry. This morning I have John Talin, and John is a 24-year vet. He's got 24 years of total service, and he is currently with Hyannis Fire in Massachusetts. He's a lieutenant paramedic up there, and he's a former canine handler for the Massachusetts Task Force. And he reached out to me, wanted to get into his story and kind of get a little deep today. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation, and just thanks for coming on, man. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you very much.
So let's start with that music question we talked about. What's the last song you listened to?
Oh boy. I listen to country, and I'm not very good with group bands or names of songs, but it was certainly a country song. Name I don't know, but yeah, just country.
All right. So I won't put you on the spot and have you hum a few bars and that kind of thing. But if it comes up, let me know, and we'll let people know. I've had a couple of people come on and sing and been like, okay, I think I know what song you're trying to get across to me. So, yeah. Right. So welcome. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up?
I've been living on the Cape my whole life. So I'm 46 now, and grew up in Mashpee, which is on Cape Cod, and moved into Hyannis about 27 years ago, and got hired with Hyannis Fire in 2004. Before that, I was with Hyannis Fire and Yarmouth Fire, and Hyannis was always my number one choice. So I was lucky enough to get on there.
Well, what made that your number one choice all the time? It's, I know you're local, but there has to be a reason why that was the number one choice and not say something large like Boston Fire is your choice.
I didn't. I think it was more just nervousness of leaving the Cape and going to a larger department like that, Boston or New York or something like that. And back when I got hired, it was so hard to get a job. I originally wanted to be a canine handler for a police department.
Okay.
And I started applying to the local police departments, never got hired because I didn't have any law enforcement experience. So I was at the local gym working out, and I saw this sign on the wall saying, "Come join the Barnesville Fire Department as a call firefighter." So I gave them a call, got an interview, got the call position in 2000, and went to EMT school with them, paramedic school, and at the time they weren't hiring full time. So I took the first full time position I could, which was with Yarmouth. They sent me to the Mass Fire Academy, and then Hyannis hired me in November 29th of 2004. I always wanted Hyannis because it's kind of like the hub of the Cape. It's we got the largest commercial properties on the Cape, along with Falmouth has pretty good commercial size properties. But we tend to stay pretty steady. We average about 22 calls a day, do about 8,000 calls a year, cover 9 square miles. Within those 9 square miles, we got a bunch of schools, the hospital, which is kind of our station too. We're always pulling ambulances out of there. And, the Cape Cod Mall, the harbor, the airport, stuff like that, all the transits.
Well, you have to have a pretty mixed population out there as well, I imagine. I mean, you've got
Certainly.
you've got millionaires and billionaires owning property out there as well, right?
Correct. Yeah. We can go from, a homeless individual all the way up to the Kennedys in the next call, which has happened,
Yeah, so it's got to be at least interesting in that sense as well.
Yes, it is. Very interesting. The two hardest patients I've dealt with are the extremely rich and the extremely poor. It's unfortunate. It's just the expectation level of their expectation level of the service.
How is it different? What did you find different about the two extremes then?
The demand, just the looking at, they were more, they felt more entitled than your average in-collar worker. This is, the extremely poor that are on social service and stuff like that, and the rich that had that have millions and millions of dollars. I dealt with one individual that he was extremely rude to us and just saying that his father pays our taxes and our salaries and demanding that we do this and that. We did the best we could and treated him fairly as we do with everybody. But it was definitely it was challenging to deal with that.
So you grow up on the Cape. What was growing
Yes.
up like? What was life like on the Cape as a kid? What was family life like for you?
Growing up on the Cape, it was good. It's been good. Back in the 80s when I grew up, it was there was no cell phones, there's no iPhones, iPads, no internet. So we're outside all the time. Uh, I grew up in Mashpee and near Seabury, and very lucky to grow up in that area of the town. However, I was one of 2 kids in the neighborhood, and it was mainly summer residents that were there. So I always grew up only being an only child until I was a little bit later on in life when I got a stepsister when my dad got remarried. Parents were divorced when I was 5, and it was definitely challenging. It was hard growing up in 2 separate households. It kind of prepared me for the compartmentalization that we do on the job. I had 2 separate houses, 2 separate groups of friends, 2 different sets of toys growing up, 2 sets of different clothes. Like I'd go to my dad's with nothing, for the weekend, and besides the clothes on my back, because I wasn't allowed to take anything from my mother's and vice versa. And my family said that, it was one of the hardest divorces that they ever witnessed.
Hmm.
My mother unfortunately used me as a pawn during the divorce, and while I was growing up, it was hard. I remember standing in the front yard. My dad was a traveling salesman with, one of the, lawnmower companies, and his whole region was New England and also New York. So he would be up in Maine one day, and I'd have Thursday night dinners, and he would come back from Maine, drive 4 or 5 hours to
Right.
pick me up to go out to dinner. And, my mother would, make me stand in the driveway with her hands on my shoulders and whisper in my ear saying, tell your dad you don't want to go with him.
Hmm.
So that made it, that was hard for my father. That was hard for me. Just stand there and have to say that to your dad as like a 8-year-old kid, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. No, that's
And,
inexcusable.
and there was unfortunately some neglect, um, as, as I grew up. I'd be left at home a lot, while my mother was out. She was, she liked, alcohol. So she would bring me to the local bar. I remember doing homework and writing papers, sitting down at one of the tables and at one of the local, Chinese food places while she, drank with her boyfriend. And I'd run around Mashpee Commons and, just be a 8, 9, 10-year-old kid, while your parent, drink and have, and do that sort of thing.
So do you grow up the entire time in mom's house predominantly, or
I
do you
did.
eventually go to dad's?
I never went to dad's. I'd always spend like a couple weekends, or a couple weeks of summer and every other weekend with my dad. And, for a while, every Thursday night dinner with him when I was growing up. But my dad, when I was roughly 13, 14, I got laid off from the, tractor company and picked up a job out in Wisconsin. So he moved out there, and he didn't move back until, geez, I was almost 40. So I didn't have him in my life every single day, and I'd go months without talking to him.
Mm.
It was, that's partially my fault, just never reaching out. But as a teenager, that's something that, you just don't do that often.
Right.
You're always, when I was growing up, pretty self-absorbed, just being a teen and doing teen stuff.
Well, yeah. And like, it's something it's easy to get used to a pattern, I suppose.
Yes, definitely.
So so what's high school like? How do you get through school? Where do you go right after school? Are there issues there or not? Or is it something that was smooth for you? Or what was it for you going to school and get into education?
Definitely not, smooth sailing. I stayed back in the first grade. I got, diagnosed with a learning disability, dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I was put in special ed classes. So I was taken out of mainstream classes and put in, the special class that, from what I remember, it was real basic. They just got you through school, the best that they could. And same with my high school career. I was with the same same kids for, my whole entire academic career until I got to high school. Then it was again 4 years of the same people. And I never really had many friends in high school, only maybe one or two. And that kind of goes back to, growing up alone and just being, alone by myself in that neighborhood. But yeah, I didn't have very many, friends growing up, just, 2 or 3. And that was about it.
And so you get into the special ed program from second grade all the way through till you graduate.
Correct. Yeah.
But I mean, you get out and you find your way to the fire department, and now, I mean, I know because you've told me that you've worked on a couple of degrees and you're now working towards your master's.
That is true. Yeah. I'm, currently 3 classes away from completing my master's in, public administration, emergency services. It's definitely a challenge. It's a lot of writing as I'm doing it through Anna Marie College. And every week there's, papers due, and discussion posts every week, and commenting on other students' posts. It's a lot of writing, a lot of work. I'm enjoying it though. It's definitely enjoying the journey of it.
And you, like you said at the beginning of the show, you stumbled upon an ad saying, "Hey, come join the fire department."
Yes,
And you joined as a call firefighter, meaning you just got paid for the calls you ran, correct?
correct. Yeah.
Okay. And that was 2000. And I mean, how does it, you gave the basics, but how does it start to progress for you? Because you do go to paramedic school, right? What
Yes.
is like 2002? So you've only been doing the call firefighter for a short time, and then you go to to paramedic school. What was that like for you
Right.
with the dyslexia and the learning disability?
It was definitely hard, especially when we got into pharmacology and the calculations. I've never been really great with math. I, just set up, I figured it out through help with other students and also through a couple of the instructors that took extra time with me. It's once I got to the cardiology part that I kind of excelled at. That's, I'm a visual learner, just like a lot of us in our industry. And just being able to see the the rhythm strip and also the 12 lead and putting two and two together and knowing that the heart's doing one thing when it represents this on the EKG. Uh, That that's where I kind of excelled with that part. Through the paramedic school, it was difficult, especially as I read a little bit slower than normal.
Mm-hmm.
A couple grade levels lower than that, and so I was always spending a lot of time reading and rereading and taking notes. I always felt like I was just behind, but I got through it and got through it through the first time. After I, finished paramedic school, I went down to Maryland University for their 2-week critical care class and took that and studied for the flight paramedic exam and got certified at that. Never wanted to be a flight medic. Just, not a huge fan of helicopters or you force them in the air.
Yeah, you have to overcome nature to fly. I get what you're
True.
saying. And if you're not flying it, you're not responsible for much of the safety of it.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So childhood wasn't great. It wasn't the worst, but it wasn't great either for you. And there's a lot to overcome
Right.
there. I mean, that dyslexia in itself is a challenge, but you do, and you start to overcome that, and you find your way to the fire service. But
Mhm.
along the same lines, I know that you start kind of flirting with alcohol early on in your life, right?
I did. I I didn't I started probably I had my first drink when I was young. It was somewhere between 8 and 11. It was at a Super Bowl party. I had my first beer and got sick from that night. It was interesting because my mother didn't have much of a concern about it. It was more of a joke with the adults.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't touch it again until I was late high school. My senior year is when I really found the alcohol and started drinking. Then for a while, I stopped when I was about 21, 22, because I was big into fitness and realized that alcohol is not the best thing when you're trying to be super healthy.
Hey guys, one of the things I like to do is bring some value to your life, whether it's my show or a book or a therapist or whatever. I want to bring value to your life. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to introduce you to another podcast that you need to listen to, and it is going to bring value to your life. TJ, my friend and a guest on this show many times over, runs the show Keep the Promise. And his goal is to create a community of resilient and well-rounded firefighters. And he's doing that. He's doing just that. Don't miss out on this show. Go find it, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your downloads. Give it a listen. Let me know what you think.
Once I started in the fire service, in the fire department, it's, alcohol is, it's inviting. You go out to the bars with members of the shift, members of the department, have a couple drinks. You have a good shift, go out and have a couple drinks. You have a bad shift, same thing. The unfortunate funerals, same thing. Um, Settling union contracts, going out and celebrating
Mhm.
that. It just, it seemed like my world kind of revolved around alcohol for a while. It started off slow, and then towards the end, it was pretty bad. I would go and drink, I'd leave work for a day shift and hit the liquor store at the Rotary. And by the time I was at the exit to get onto the Route 6, I'd be 3, 4 beers in and have a couple left until I was getting home.
And was that a reaction to anything or just a habit? Like, were you coming away from work and you were seeing some shit there and as a reaction to that? Or is it just because it was the time and that's what you did?
It was both. It was mainly the time and what I did. There was a couple calls that, as we all have, that stick with you. That, that they're just hard to forget. It's when something goes wrong is when that's what sticks with you.
Yeah.
And there was one call where we got called out for a young girl. She was probably 8, 9 or 10, somewhere in there. She was having like what appeared to be a very bad anxiety attack. She was roughhousing with her brother. Brother pushed her into the cabinet. She struck her head and then had an anxiety attack. And we didn't know we couldn't calm her down in any way that we tried. And I remember her father saying to me, what's wrong with my daughter? And it sucked when you have to turn around and say, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And since she got pushed in the cabinet, struck her head, we kind of went down the trauma route and put her on a backboard. And as we were going from the house to the ambulance, she started frothing at the mouth and just went downhill from there. And I thought that it was all my doing and that, I caused this and ended up, taking, just contributing to her death. And it come to find out a little bit later on that it was, she had it was flash pulmonary neurological edema. And it wasn't due to anything that we did. She just had an aneurysm, unfortunately, at such a young age.
It just happened to coincide with what she was doing with her brother?
It just happened like that during that event. And it was awful.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah. Especially as a paramedic, you go in and you're presented with what you think is a trauma call.
Right.
And yes, it's still a trauma call, but it's not the drama that you're expecting.
No.
And you're all the evidence is saying, look here, look here, look here. While the
Right.
killer was over in the other corner going, no, I'm over here.
Yeah, exactly. And, we go to the elderly patients that have aneurysms and it's, they've lived 70, 80, 90 years where this experienced life where this young girl was just entering life
Mm-hmm.
and had a whole life in front of her. And, that's hard. That's hard to deal with at least for me, it was definitely.
So I think you have a few like timelines that coincide because you're working as a firefighter paramedic. So you've got that timeline. You're married,
Yes.
and I know that your marriage was rocky. It through a lot of that, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So you've got that timeline, but then you're also working as a canine handler at the same time.
Yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed that.
And you're doing a lot there, right? You're doing a lot of travel.
Yes.
And what kind of calls were you going on there?
We went on 5 deployments. So I was a handler with the Mass Task Force, and I had to back up a little bit, I always wanted to be a cop, and to be a cop, I always wanted to be a canine handler because when I was like 5, they came to the school and did a canine demonstration, and they had the fire trucks and
Yeah.
the police and the canines, and I just fell in love with the dogs.
Of course.
And so like throughout my whole career, I wanted to be a canine handler. And it wasn't until I got onto Hyannis and met Tom Kenny, and he said, you should try for the Mass Task Force and be a canine handler there. And he's like, I can introduce you to some people. So he did. And one thing led to another. And I was in offer picking up a 1.5-year-old female Belgian Malinois. Her name was Pee Wee. And she came from Germany. She was the run of the litter. She was about 45 pounds, which is small, on the smaller end of the Malinois. And they didn't know what to do with her overseas, so they shipped her to a canine importer here. And he was like, I can use it for detection. So I picked her up to train her for live human scent. And it took a while to get her certified. It was a lot of training. Like every Sunday, I would travel somewhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours, to north of Boston, to the western part of the state, down to Connecticut. And then probably about 5-6 times a year, I'd go down to Maryland and Virginia and North Carolina and train at a week stint down there. And it was probably one of the best times of my life, because it was doing something I truly loved, working with a dog. When I was growing up, I actually wrote this down just to remember it. When I was growing up as a young kid, kids will have like imaginary friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have an imaginary friend. I had an imaginary dog because I wasn't allowed to have a dog. And imaginary dogs, you went everywhere with me, and that's what got my love for the dog. That's where the passion started. And getting Pee Wee, it was very rewarding to train all the time and just see the progress and to know that you're there for like a greater good. One of the things that got me in that direction was JFK's inaugural speech. Ask what you can do for your country, not what the country can do for you. And I tried to join the military in 1999, and especially the Marine Corps. And, I told the recruiter I had dyslexia. Then as soon as that happened, everything came to a screeching halt, and I wasn't able to join. Actually, in my mid-30s, I tried joining the Coast Guard, and I was still in the system, and they denied me too. But because of that, it led me down a different path. And that path was working with the dog for 9 years. And it was great. It was very rewarding, certainly.
Tell me about the connection that you make with a dog when you're a handler like that. What's that like? Because I think that we pretty much anybody listening to the show that's ever been in the military or a fire department or a cop knows what it's like to be part of a team, be part of a crew. And do you start to, I have to imagine you start that same feeling with a dog as a handler.
Yeah, you definitely do. And for anybody that has a dog, you know that there's a certain bond between you and the dog. As when you work with a dog, you have that particular bond. On top of it, you have a working bond.
Right.
And that's really special. I couldn't imagine being a police officer with a working dog and sending the dog into a certain situation where that somebody's going to try to hurt the dog. Like and something happened to the dog that, I don't know, that'd be very, very difficult for me to recover from. It was hard when Pee Wee passed away for me to recover. I was down some dark holes with that, definitely.
Yeah, that's a big chunk of the story you sent me was that when Pee Wee died, and that was in 2016, correct?
Yes, it was April 15th of 2016 at 14:10 hours.
Now, again, we've got competing timelines because you went through a divorce as well the year before that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so then I can only imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, you go through this divorce and you have the dog, and the kind of that bond might have strengthened with the dog because of the divorce. I can imagine.
Oh, definitely. The dog was there every single time. Good days, bad days, no matter what mood I was in, she was always there. And just that unconditional love of a canine is it's amazing. Absolutely is.
And through this time, you're still running your calls. You're still adding whatever traumas you see at work, whatever personal
Yep.
traumas you do, going through the rocky relationship with your wife, and your drinking is amping up. Correct?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It amped up, probably started to peak around, 2014, 2015, and just stayed at that high level until I went to rehab.
So, what makes you go to rehab? Where do you decide? Because I know, like when Pee Wee died, you mentioned like you couldn't even function, which
No.
and like I'm reading through your notes, and the bullet point above the Pee Wee's death is talking about your divorce, and he says it amplifies your
Mhm.
drinking to 12 to 16 beers a night when you're not working. But then when
Right.
when you go to the bullet point about Pee Wee, it's extensive, and it's like
Hmm.
I can see the connection you had with your dog. Does that make sense? Just through the amount of information in that bullet point versus the one for your divorce. And
Yes,
I can see
definitely.
that connection, and you fucking went through it when your dog died.
Oh, I was, I was in some very, very dark places that I did not know how. Today, I'm amazed that I got out of them.
So
Absolutely amazed.
so do you mind going into that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I would find myself falling asleep in her bed. I couldn't pick up her toys, at least for the first several months. I couldn't do that. They were all over the house. Took me, uh, just looking back at my notes, and it took me a year to take her nose prints off the windows of my truck. And the dark places, you don't know if you're going to make it to the next day. I don't know what kept me going. I honestly don't. I think it was more to prove a point to others. It's unfortunate you have friends, family, fans, and people that don't like you for whatever reason it is. And I had one person come up to me during the divorce, and it's like, "Hey, I'm worried about you that you're going to kill yourself." And say, "Ah, you got nothing to worry about. I'm not going to do that." And it was it was maybe that situation that said, I'm gonna prove you wrong and not do it
Right.
and stay strong and get through this. And I'm honestly super happy I did.
Yeah, of course.
you know but those dark places are they're painful. Like rock bottom, it sucks. And sometimes some people hit rock bottom more than once, and I certainly did. With the psychological portion of the dog passing away, then
I was gonna say you had more than that,
it,
though. It was more than just the dog. I mean, you had within that year, you had the divorce, the dog, and your grandmother, right?
yes, yep,
And
my grandmother.
and not only that, but you said in this, what is it, a 6 week period, you had to either for yourself or with others put four dogs down.
Yeah, my other dog Bugsy went. He was an awesome Malinois. I had to put him down in mid-December. A couple months later, I had to put my friend's two dogs down at the same time. It was kind of romantic with them. They were litter mates, grew up together, lived together, and then sadly passed away together. And then a month later, Pee Wee's doing circles in the kitchen because she has a brain tumor. And it was, the night before she was 100% okay. And then the next morning, it's quite obvious what I had to do.
Right.
And then my grandmother passed away, like a month later than that,
Yeah. And then,
So yeah, the dark places were there.
of course, and you're amplifying them because you're drinking.
Yes.
You're drinking
Yeah,
heavily,
that did
not just
help.
drinking. You're drinking heavily.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I never did was wake up and drink. But on my days off, like I would start craving alcohol around 11 in the morning. And then, I'd give in. If I had nothing to do, I'd give in around 3 or 4.
Right.
And I was off to the races. I'd start off with a 4-pack of one of our local breweries and say, that's it. Then I'd go out and, go get dinner and go pick up a 6-pack. Or if I didn't go out to dinner, I'd pick up a 6-pack, kill the 6-pack and go out for a 12-pack and get through most of that every night.
Hey guys, quick break right here just to check in and thank each of you for listening to the show. Your support has been paramount and I appreciate all of you. I have one request though. I need you to share the show with everyone you know. Help me get the word out and spread these stories as far and as wide as we can. While you're at it, please leave a review of the show wherever you happen to listen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time to share your story, to talk, or to pass on suggestions. Let's get on with the rest of the show. Again, we're going to go back to those competing timelines because at the same time, you still have this divorce going. You had the divorce going. You had the divorce in 2015, and there was a lot surrounding that relationship, correct?
Yeah, there was. I stepped outside the marriage and definitely not proud of that. I'm shameful of that. And if I had to do it again, I would have done it differently. The divorce was inevitable. We got home from a vacation one time and she bluntly said to me, I don't know why we're married. And after that comment, I'm like, well, hands are up in the air and said, F it, and went and did what I, was fighting within not to do. And I followed through with my thoughts and, stepped outside the marriage. And it was, if I had to do it again, I certainly would have, done the right route of, counseling and worked with it. And if it led to divorce, then it did. It would have been a better ending than what it was.
Yeah. So that's a tumultuous time.
Yes.
So that basically, let's say 2015 through 2017, that's a fucking tumultuous time for you.
Yeah, definitely. And, I went to rehab August 14th of 2017. And so I was seeing a therapist from, probably for several years before rehab. And everything we were talking about, everything we were doing just wasn't working.
Can I ask you a question about that real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Did you feel you invested yourself in those sessions?
No, certainly not. I would try to. That's it. It didn't work. Didn't work for me because I wasn't putting in the effort to make it work. And he sent me to a specialist up in Framingham. No, Hingham. It was Hingham. Sorry. And that specialist was for sex addiction. And I got diagnosed with that. And there's a test that you take. And the test had I think it was 20 or 30 questions. And I scored pretty high on it with, the diagnosis of being diagnosed with it. And it was eye opening. I knew there was an issue and wasn't, didn't want to admit it, didn't want to talk about it, and didn't want to, do anything about it because I was, having fun with alcohol and everything else. And what led me to rehab was there was somebody in my department going through the same exact thing, same problems. And everybody, not everybody, some people would say, um, you know, they would make comments of, of us being similar. And one day I was thinking about it and thinking it over, and in our lives mirror each other as to the behaviors
Mm-hmm.
that he was doing and I was doing, drinking and and other things. And so I said, I don't want to, I don't want to do this anymore. So I made a phone call. It was the International Association of Firefighters, and they have a facility down in Maryland. And I called them, said, I have a problem. I'm drinking too much. I have a sex addiction and I need help. So they said, we don't handle that. We just handle, substance abuse. I'm like, okay. But the guy was like, "Well, let me do some digging around and I'll get back to you." And within, it was like 24, 48 hours, I got a phone call from the same person saying, "Hey, here's a number. Give us a call. It's a place down in Florida that kind of helps out with this." So I gave them a call, and it was, I was going back and forth, just communication wise, going back and forth with, the person that would get me into the place. And what settled my decision to go was him saying, "When do you want me to schedule the ticket for the flight down to Florida?" And I said, I forget what day it was, but it's like, "How about Wednesday?" And it was a few days away from the day that it was. And so I was on the plane down to Florida, and it was a Florida House Experience, was the name of the facility in Deerfield Beach. And they had they had something designated just for first responders. They had also, it was a regular substance abuse facility, but then in it, there was one just for police, fire, and military and corrections. And I was in with that group, and we had our own little area. They call it the island. It was a house that we all had separate rooms, and just Monday through Friday, 8:30 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, we would do group therapy, and then on the weekends we would do therapy with everybody else. That that helped. That certainly did. It certainly helped with my drinking because I haven't had a drink since. Sex addiction, on the other hand, was more of a challenge for me. It's been a while since I acted out, but I acted out after rehab, and that was difficult just because of the aspect of, geez, did I waste 7 weeks in Florida?
Right.
And, it was disappointing. The compartmentalization of it, I was able to compartmentalize my actions and my thoughts, and just be able to go about my day without any shame or any regret, which is compartmentalization. Everything, you got to have a balance, and I was way out of balance.
Well, let's talk about it a little bit because this is one that I
Sure.
know you've been on a podcast before, and when you and I first talked,
Yes.
you said this was something you did not share on that podcast because I mean for obvious reasons, it's something you just didn't want to share at the time, correct?
Yeah, I wasn't ready. I
So
wasn't ready to share that, and I'm certainly hesitant before today to share it. This is my story though, and there's others out there with a very similar story. And I went on that first podcast to talk about drinking. He goes, if there's a others with the same problem.
Right.
And I'm positive there's others with this problem too. And, I'll take one for the team and sacrifice whatever I have to sacrifice to discuss this.
Well, let me pick your brain a little bit. First of all, you said you took a
Sure.
test, and this test
Yes.
identified a diagnosis for you.
Correct.
Do you remember what the test was? I mean, you said it had about 20 questions on it, and you scored
It
high
did.
on it. But like, what do they ask you? What kinds of questions are they asking you to try to determine the diagnosis for this?
It's all different sex questions. I don't remember exactly what the questions were, but they were all geared to sex and yeah, they're just all geared to that.
Was it towards
And I just,
kind of like how does this affect your daily life kind of questions? And is your sex? I don't know words. I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Maybe proclivity, or I can't even speak English today. So pardon me.
Yeah.
Does your seeking of this, does it impact your daily life? Is it that kind of questioning, or is it, like what kinds of, the amount of, or the amount of time? Does it surround that?
It did. It surrounded, the craving for it, the obsession of it, how frequently, and, things like that.
And I know that you and I talked before we came on the air today, and we had talked before about it, is how to tell your story without basically incriminating yourself for things.
Yeah.
And you laugh. I'm not trying to make light, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but
Yeah.
it affected your life in a way that you sought out this. I guess would relief be the way of saying it. You sought out you had to satisfy the craving somehow.
Right.
And so if you couldn't satisfy it, you know, in the marriage or in a relationship, you sought it out elsewhere.
Oh, certainly. I, there was just some instances that, definitely weren't the best situation to be in.
Kind of explain what your kind of a day-to-day life was for you while you're dealing with this and still dealing with it. Cause I think I like the way you kind of compared your alcohol addiction with the sex addiction.
Yep.
So if you can liken it to that being an alcoholic, does it affect you the same way?
It does. So when I was in rehab, I was asked the question, what is it like? And sex addiction is a little bit different than other addictions. There's substance abuse addictions and there's uh, process addictions. And this is one of them where it's very similar to, like gambling and overspending and working too much, just having a obsession with something like that. With alcohol, and being an alcoholic and going through recovery and not drinking again, you can, I've done it. I've done it for a while. Like you don't have to go into a liquor store. You don't have to go into a bar, a pub, a restaurant. You can stay home. You can change your friends because you're not into the same thing that you used to be, and they're still into what you used to be into. So you can change all that. That part's, it's hard. It's not difficult. It's hard. But the sex addiction, it's a little bit different. It's if you're an alcoholic and you work at a liquor store or you are a bartender, you're always around it. Doesn't go away. You can't. It's something you can't avoid. The temptations, that is. You just. It's very hard. It's difficult to deal with because it's constantly, unless you lived in the mountains and lived by yourself and didn't see anybody, it's one thing, but if you're social and you're just out and about, going to Starbucks, getting a coffee or going to the mall to get some clothes, it's everywhere. The temptations are everywhere.
And I don't know, did one feed the other? Did one addiction feed the other?
Definitely alcohol did not help. That enhanced the other addiction by far. It made it quite easy to do whenever I wanted to do.
Just because it kind of lowered the bar for you?
Oh yeah, certainly. It was, it lowered the bar, lowered the standard, lowered everything. There was no self-control. Zero.
And you also discussed how because of the addiction that you hurt a lot of people. I mean, and
I did.
I can see how, because now you're talking about, you're taking such, you can just see how it would hurt women, especially the women that were involved with you, your wife, your ex-wife, girlfriends, whatever it was. I can see that, there's just this unlimited potential for harm.
Yes. And that, if I could change one thing, that's the one thing I would change, is not to do what I did, because, I compromised relationships. I, didn't treat women right, and it was 100% wrong and 100% on me. And it's not something I'm proud of. It's something I'm disgusted with. It's something that it's just wrong. And, there's always that question. I'll listen to podcasts, and there'll be the question at the end, and it'll be, what would you do differently? And a lot of people would say, I wouldn't do a thing differently. I would do a lot of things differently if I had to redo my life. I would do a lot of things differently. That would be one of them that I wouldn't do. And I hurt a lot of women, and I feel horrible about it. There's no way around it. And I lost, some great people in my life because of what I did. There was many occasions where the girlfriend I had, was amazing all the way around. And, I would do something stupid. And then once I got on track, that reputation followed me. And Cape Cod's a small place. Everybody knows everybody. It's a small gene pool, and I remember having one relationship, and I would have people go out of their way to contact her and fill her in on everything I've done. The thing I did was I beat them to the punch and, confessed to her everything that I had done. That helped, but didn't help. And people just reaching out to her just made the situation worse, to the point of, the relationship came to an end. And I'm happy to say that it came to an end because of, not for anything I did during that relationship. It was, unfortunately, that it was the past stuff that I did that the relationship came to an end to, but nothing I did during it.
Right.
That was, if I had anything going for me, that was that. that not drinking.
Well, I'm assuming that you're given like tricks and tactics to defeat some urges, either with the drinking or the sex addiction, when you're in rehab. Am I correct?
Yep.
So how do
You are.
So the drinking was almost like the easy part, right? You drying up was almost the easy part compared to the other addiction.
It was easier.
Right. Yeah, I don't mean to cheapen it. Don't take it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I apologize if it came off that way.
Yeah, no worries at all. It was easier because I could avoid it.
Right.
I didn't go into the liquor stores. I didn't go into bars. I didn't go into restaurants. I stopped hanging out with people I hung out with, and it was that. But the other addiction, people are everywhere. Women are everywhere, and that was a challenge for a while.
How do you deal with it today?
I simply just I have this one phrase that I quote that I say to myself, and it's do good, be good, and just be nice. Simple as that. It's just do good, be good, and just be nice. That's why whenever I have a temptation or a thought, I just repeat that. I'll even write it down, throw it out, if I wrote down. And, I like to put things on a 10 scale, like 0 to 10. 0 is like no thoughts, no urge to act out, no urge to drink. 0. 10, you're off to the races and acting out or drinking.
Right.
With alcohol, I hover day to day around a 1. With the other addiction, I'm probably hovering around 2, sometimes a 3. 4 and 5 is when I start to get concerned, because I know it just takes one little instance, one little thought, or obsessive a thought, and I'm easily, 7 or 8. So my tactic, when I'm starting to get around 4 or 5, is I'll just randomly call somebody, randomly check in with somebody. I'll go do something that takes my mind off it. One of my biggest passions is shooting, and it's whether it's a rifle in long range or archery. I'll go to the range. I'll go out to the backyard. I'll go to the local archery store and just shoot. And being able to focus on the process of shooting shuts my mind off from the world. That shuts my mind off from other things. And in rehab, they said, move a muscle, change the thought. So I literally get up, do something, and it would certainly decrease that temptation. It never takes it away. It's always there. And, but shooting and archery are my big outs. I call it meditation behind a rifle, because to shoot precision, you got to work on your breathing. You got to fire during your natural respiratory pause. It's a lot of focus,
Right.
Natural point of aim, all that, and just the relaxation. And I'll go to the range, and, I'll be there for 2 hours and fire off like 12 rounds, but I'm dry firing practice in between every round. And it's just shuts my mind off from the world. And the same with archery, does the same thing. It's just the process you go through before you fire the shot that clears my mind.
Well, let's go back to that time frame. You go to Florida House, and August 15th of 2017, and you said 6 weeks, correct?
7.
7 weeks.
August 14th to October 4th.
All right. And you come out of that, And the last day you had to drink was August 14th of 2017.
Yeah.
You come
Yeah,
out
the
of
day before the 13th. Yeah.
What's that?
The 13th was
Okay.
the last drink. Yeah.
So that you come out of rehab and you come back to the Cape and everything is still there for you. You know, the bars are still there. The pressures are still there. The women are still there. Whatever it is, they're still there. So how does life start again on October 5th or 4th when you come back to the Cape?
Well, before I came back, I had somebody go to the house and just empty everything out for alcohol wise. And, I just, immersed myself into work. It's funny, when I came back, I worked almost 300 hours of extra overtime a month in 1 month, and just kept me from doing anything wrong because I was always at work.
Right.
And the alcohol, it was easier than the other one. It just, was able to stay away from it. And I still have a great support network. My family, I didn't know. I thought that when I went to rehab and when I got back, I would have been disowned by my family. For some reason, I just had that insecurity, and it was the complete opposite. I didn't know what work was going to be like when I got back.
Right.
And it was the complete opposite. People were supportive and still are.
Well, I think that fear's legit.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And everybody has their insecurities, and that was certainly one of mine. And, my fire chief, who still is the fire chief today, it was amazing. He was very supportive and was always there, still there. It's good having the leadership like that.
Yeah, before we even started, you mentioned that your department and the chief were aware of what you were doing today and that you were comfortable with.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, very true.
So the calls don't end, because I know that you had one of those. You basically had a cardiac arrest, the first call out of the box when you got back from rehab, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did. It was, I was on the engine. So we cross staff. We have 3 ambulances, 3 engines, a tower, heavy rescue, a couple boats, and we run the ambulance. And I was on the engine that night, and we went to one of our residents, and it was like a 40-year-old woman with Down syndrome that went into cardiac arrest. I forget the cause. She was staying with relatives while her parents were on a cruise. If I remember right. And so she was in the care of the ambulance crew in the ambulance, and I had to go back into the house to, I had to go get something in the house. And as I was leaving, her uncle, I get the exact words, what he asked. I know what he asked, but I forget the exact words he used. It was on the gist of, my reply was, she's in good hands. He said, you used some choice words, and my answer was, she's in cardiac arrest and it doesn't look good. And that was like a week or two of being out. And geez, before rehab, I would have been getting off shift. I would have been off to the races, but I wasn't. I just wasn't. And that was difficult it's difficult to be direct like that sometimes, because it's better for the family when you are. It certainly is. They can start the process of what they need to do to cope with the situation. But it's not easy to tell somebody that, there's no hope for their relative.
Yeah, and you mentioned that before rehab, you would have gotten off that day, and you would have, or that next morning, and
Yep.
you would have had drinks. So,
Oh yeah,
so
certainly.
how do you change that? What do you do that next morning?
I think I went for a run. I just got on the treadmill and just ran.
So you moved a muscle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'd go 5, 6, 7 miles on the treadmill and I'd feel great when I got off. Tell you that. Top of the world.
Well, let's talk about the alcohol, because one of the
Yep.
things that people, and this is weird because I know some of their reactions when you quit drinking, or when you stop drinking, or when you go to a party or a
Mhm.
gathering and you're not drinking, and people look at you like you're weird because for some reason alcohol is expected. Um,
Right.
I'm in month 10 of a year challenge to not have any alcohol, and where it
Oh,
goes
good.
from where it goes after that, I'm not sure. I've
Right.
had a very interesting, intricate relationship with alcohol, and I know with some introspection and some thought that it would be very easy to just continue on and not drink. Um,
Yes.
but I also know that whenever anything happens, good or bad, the expected
Yep.
response is to go get a drink or to toast
Yes.
somebody. And I've been through a few things this year, and like my mom's death and things like that, and
Well, that's
or
fine.
the retirement, and the expectation is to drink. And when you don't drink, they
Mhm.
ask why aren't you drinking? And
Right.
and I think that when you make that decision to quit, it's a very fine line to then not become preachy.
Yes.
And so how do
Thanks.
you approach that for yourself when people are around you, or when people are trying to engage you in that arena, or asking you to come out, and or do you do you do you preach about it, or is it just something you share with people, and you say, this is my decision, and this is why I made the decision?
It's funny. It's you can. I don't. I don't tell people uh, not to drink. I just say it's not for me. I know I can't drink responsibly, so I don't drink at all. Other people can. They can have a glass of wine or a beer or whatever it is once in a while or however often they do it. It's the one thing I do say is watch for the progression. If you notice like in the beginning of your career, you're having none, maybe one or two, 5, 6 years into your career, it's more frequent, it's larger amount. Look for the progression, look and go to the root cause of what's causing the issue. I just know alcohol is not for me. Other people can do it. I don't think of anything different. It's just not for me. And, if people don't offer, maybe as they know my story. And, there was a couple of incidents and I just said, no, thank you. And he said, I just don't drink. And, but yeah, just look for the progression. I'm not going to say anything. So you shouldn't drink or anything like that. It's just, I actually had a friend, reach out to me, a couple months ago and he said that was the one thing he liked about that I said on that podcast was, I'm not here to tell you not to drink because you just, some people can't and do it responsibly. I just know I can't. And, I do miss that effect of, 1 or 2 beers and just that good relaxing feeling, but I know I can't do that.
Yeah, I think that's important because you mentioned the why. Why are you doing it?
Right.
Why? What is the reason for the drink? And I
Yes.
think that's very important. If you're sitting around and you're going to have drinks because you're going to have drinks, like it was,
Yep.
maybe there's some questions there, And again, I
Yeah.
don't want to preach to anybody. I'm not telling anybody they shouldn't drink. I'm just saying, like
No.
you are, what's the reason? What's the progression? Let's watch
Right.
it. If you're doing it in response to something, and it starts to become a negative coping skill, then there might be issues there.
Mhm.
Definitely, I'm not telling
Definitely.
anybody not to drink, but I'm just Same with you.
No.
Why are you doing it? What's the reason? What's the motivation?
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Definitely look for the root cause, and it's like alcohol is like a Band-Aid, just putting a Band-Aid on something. And, just like with any other substance abuse addiction or process, addiction, it's all it is. It's a Band-Aid. You gotta look for the root cause. You gotta look at why am I doing this, and work with that.
so what did you find was your root cause?
It was mainly the childhood. And, I have a therapist now, and he said that, he goes, your mother did the best job she could. It just wasn't a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And she, there was a lot of neglect. I was, left alone a lot, and, around stuff that, and witnessed stuff that I shouldn't have as a small kid, and a lot of people go through it, and a lot of people, everybody handles it a different way. I just handled it, unfortunately, in a negative way when I got older. Like I said, it was just a Band-Aid. The alcohol and acting out was just a Band-Aid.
I was going to ask that, is the sex addiction the same thing and rooted in the same cause?
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
And you put a bullet point on your notes, and there it's italicized, and it says, I know because of alcohol and the choices I've made while drinking, I hurt people emotionally. I destroyed a marriage. I wrecked a good reputation, lost respect, and you were reckless. I remain in the process of building back what I lost. Unfortunately, it'll never be the same. I've come to terms with this, and I've accepted it. So, have there been amends made for you?
I've certainly apologized to a lot of people. I have. It's in with myself. I've just, it's hard because, I like to think I had a good good reputation before, I did all this. And, it's hard to, once you have a good reputation, and you do several dumb things and ruin that reputation, it's like trust. The, I don't know if you ever get it back, and, I've certainly worked hard towards it and to get it back. If I have gotten it back, if I haven't, then I just haven't. But that doesn't stop me from doing good. It doesn't stop me from then the drive to get it back. Well, everybody has their opinions of everybody, and, I'm going through things that I went through, and people that go through things that hit rock bottom, opens your eyes. It really opens your perspective, and you see things in a different light, and you're less judgmental. At least I am. And you're more open-minded, and if somebody says something or does something wrong, you don't take it lightly, but you may understand the why behind it better than somebody that hasn't experienced that.
One of the first things you said is that your most recent battle is the negativity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that you've created in your own head, correct? It's something that you and I'm assuming it's things like self-talk. You're
Yes.
kind of diminishing your worth. Those negative thoughts, I imagine, and which is ironic because yesterday in my intro for yesterday, or the show that released today, I talked about having some of those negative self-talk or self thoughts
Right.
myself, where you just kind of start to really beat yourself up, and you don't.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it until you're deep into it. And like, what the fuck am I doing? Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And you say you create a toxic atmosphere or environment in your own head.
Yeah. As the saying goes, you would, what's the saying with, talking to yourself, and you would never tolerate somebody talking to you that way as you
Right.
talk to yourself.
And we all do it to an
Oh
extent. Some
yeah.
of us just do it more than others and really just really dig deep, don't we? And
Yeah.
it's not fun.
No, when I was going through my, uh, as I was like, oh, I say it, my shit. I used to look in the mirror and just say, you know, you're a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
I'd repeat that in the mirror to myself several times. And let me tell you, that does not work.
No.
Unless you want to be that, it works just fine.
Right. It's
But
not a form of motivation if you think that.
It's definitely not a good form of
No.
motivation, no. And, everybody has their insecurities and they're all different. We all deal with them in a different way. And, today I do my best to say positive things to myself. Do my best not to come up with excuses. I just, I do my best to be positive. There's some days where, I'm negative. I'm like, well, I feel like I'm useless today or whatever phrase I use. That's just one that comes to my mind. But, those days aren't as often as they used to be. Definitely not as often as they used to be.
So are those the victories that because all right, the negative thoughts aren't as often as they used to be. They don't go as deep as they used to, and they don't last as long as they used to. Those are those victories you start stacking on top of each other, correct?
Definitely.
So if you had to sum up where you are now in totality of your life as John, where are you now?
A lot better place. Definitely a lot better place. No drinking, no acting out. Positive mindset. Do my best not to complain. I do my best to check the ego, especially at the door when I go into work. And, that's what I repeat to myself, do good, be good, and just be nice, and all out effort.
Yeah, I mean that mantra is that hits the spot. It works for anybody, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's helped me, especially when I start to go down or when I start to go off the rails or get wrapped around the axle about something.
So let's get to my last two questions.
Sure.
And we talked about it briefly at the beginning, and sometimes it hems people up because and it's supposed to. I don't want it to be. I wanted something that had some value when we talk, and this question was posed to me, and it was a tough one to answer. When was the last time you saw something that gave you a sense of awe or experienced a sense of awe?
That is definitely a difficult question. And when we first spoke, I had nothing. I couldn't think of anything until today when we discussed that. And what comes to mind, it's still a difficult question. And what quickly came to mind was the other week I was in Worcester and I attended Echelon Front's roll call leadership lecture. And the three speakers that they had Nick Levery, Cody Gandy, and Danny Zem. And I say it a lot. A lot of people say it when they're speaking was the and there was not one. They did not say once. Their delivery of leadership, their ability to communicate and speak was phenomenal.
Right.
Absolutely the three best lectures I have witnessed in a very long time. They didn't say once. And I was purposely looking for it, as I usually do. because I say it way too often, and I'm trying to get away from it. And they didn't say it at all. So that's my moment of awe.
I was going to say, I sit here behind a mic quite often and I say it all the time because I listen to these shows and I'm tempted to take them all out, but then it would just not sound, it wouldn't sound natural. So if
Right.
it gets excessive on my end or from a guest, I take some out, but I don't take them all out.
Yeah, I hate the fact that I do it. I really do.
Well, I'm telling you,
several things, but that's one thing I wish I could just delete.
Record yourself speak for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you'll figure out how often you say it when you don't think you actually say it that often.
Yeah, it's gross.
What about a book, sir? What book do you want to recommend to the audience to check out?
There's several. There's a bunch. I'll go off on a little, I'll go down a rabbit hole.
Okay.
And one of the best trade magazines we have out there is Fire Training from Fire Department Training Network. That is by far one of the best trade journals we have.
Okay.
There's Fire Engineering, Firehouse, Gems Magazine. They're all great. They serve a great purpose. Definitely Jocko Willink's book, Extreme Ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a must read for leaders and even informal leaders and members of the fire service that aren't necessarily striving to hold rank. It's a great book. Another good book I got right here is the Armed Forces Officer edition of 1950.
Okay.
Yep, written in the 1950s, and it still holds true. The book that Echelon Front recommended the other week was The Book of Five Rings by Misaki, the samurai warrior. That's a good book. The one book I'm chipping away at, it's like 711 pages. I'm a little bit past the halfway point. It's On War by Karl von Clausewitz.
Oh, yep. I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with it.
Yes, a lot of people are. And there's one thing in here about leadership. There's a lot of great tidbits of information on leadership in this book, in a lot of books. The title in this chapter, one of the subtitles is Knowledge Must Become Capability.
Yeah.
That is 100% accurate. This was written in the 1800s, and that still holds true today. I was speaking with deputy chief, a retired deputy chief of one of the off-Cape departments this morning when I went to one of the breakfast places to get breakfast, and we were discussing leadership. And we can read all the leadership books we want to. We can read all the fire service books. We can attend lectures, go to trainings, train at work, but it's the application of it and how to do it. That's the driving force.
Yeah.
It's the application of what you've learned and how you do it to be effective.
The application is so key in just about anything.
It is. Very true. 100%. The last book I'll share is by Jim Moss, Firefighter Success, the 20 C's of Firefighter Excellence. I've given this book to several people. It's a quick read. It's a good read. I had the opportunity to speak with General James Mattis.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually sent him that book, and he read it and sent me back a thank you card. And, in the card, it was said it's applicable to military too. It's applicable to any style of leadership. It's applicable to any profession. it starts off with it fills it gives you a lot of great information that you can apply. There's one quote in here. I'm trying to find it. It's by Michael Jordan, and I don't know the quote exactly, but he was asked, how did he become so successful? He said, I remain coachable.
Yeah. Coachable is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. And he was arguably probably the best basketball players of all time.
Right.
Him and Kobe Bryant,
Yeah. We won't start that argument between Michael and Kobe and LeBron and who believes what.
I'm always going to favor Michael Jordan.
Of course. Well, because I'll settle it. He was the best basketball player of all time. Anyway,
Yes.
I'll say it.
Yes.
Hey, listen, man, I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
Really enjoyed this.
I appreciate you coming on and sharing it. It's not easy to talk about, our downfalls, but it's wonderful to talk about the recovery.
Yes, it is. And everybody has their downfalls. Everybody has their problems. Everybody's dealing with something.
Yeah.
It's what it is, how they're handling it, and what type of help they need.
Well, it's just like you said, right? Be good, do good.
Just be nice.
There you go. And we'll end it right there, man. That's perfect. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right, we're out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Things We All Carry. Head over to the website, thethingsweallcarry.com, for show notes, resources, and to sign up for the newsletter. Until next week, take care of yourselves and remember to check in on each other.